Live, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening to all the authority members, good evening to staff, and good evening to everyone who's joined us tonight. I'm going to call the January 9th, 2025 Northern Virginia Transportation Authority full meeting to order. Ms. Henderson, if you don't mind, would you do the roll call, please?
Chair Randall,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Snyder,
Here.
Chairman McKay,
Here.
Chair Jefferson. Here. Board Member DeFerrante,
Here.
Mayor Gaskins. Here. Mayor Davis Younger. Mayor Mensing. Here. Mayor Reed. Here. Senator Boysko. Delegate Delaney. Delegate Sewell. Here. Mr. Gribben. Mr. Cutler.
Here.
Mr. Horsley.
Here.
I have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Very good. Authority members, I'm going to go a little off script tonight because we had an election, which means we have a few new members in the room who we may have all met, but maybe not. So what I'm going to do is going to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. But if you are new to the authority, first, welcome. We are the most pulled together, tied down, disciplined group of people you're ever going to meet and see run a public meeting. That is the promise. Don't believe any of that. I'm going to start with Mr. DeFerrante and go around and introduce yourselves. But if you're new, if you tell us a little bit more about yourselves, and by the way, welcome to the authority. So I'll start with you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt DeFerrante, Arlington County Board Member. This is started my 6th year on the board.
I'm Todd Horsley with the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. I'm the Director of Northern Virginia Transit Programs, and I'm representing our Director, Tiffany Robinson.
Good to see you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor Aaliyah Gaskins with the City of Alexandria. Was recently sworn in almost a week ago. Served on the council as a councilwoman previously. My background is in public health and urban planning, so really excited to be a part of the board. This is the authority. This is my first meeting, so looking forward to getting to know everyone.
Mayor Gaskin, you have many roles that you're going to be playing in your position as mayor and on all your regional bodies, but as mayor of Alexandria, your main role is to give Jeff McKay a hard time.
From Mayor Wilson.
Okay, no, okay, long as you know what you're doing, that's the important thing.
A lot of truth. My name is Bill Cutler. I am the head of Virginia Department of Transportation's Northern Virginia District. We've been working hard for all Northern Virginians, especially these last several days, and look forward to working with you. I've been on this body for a little over a year now. Thank you.
I'm Mayor Reed, just elected to my second 2-year term as the mayor of the city of Fairfax. This is starting my 3rd year with NVTA, and I like Bill Cutler. I just want to say
Thank you for sitting next to me.
I just want you to know, I like you.
My name is Alana Mensing. I'm the mayor of Manassas Park, just elected this past November. I've been on council for 6 years and prior to that, planning commission.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
It's Jeff McKay. I'm chairman of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, 17th year on the Board of Supervisors, 5th year as chairman, 5th year on the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. And I want to thank Mayor Gaskins for dramatically improving the representation of the city of Alexandria. We might actually do a few projects. So it is great to be here and great to welcome our new commissioners.
Wonderful.
Hi, Dave Snyder, City of Falls Church. I lost track of how many years, but in any event, it's a real honor to be here. And I want to say I like everybody here.
Here, come back around.
I'm Linda Colbert. I'm the mayor of Vienna. On council since 2014 and mayor since 2020. And I think I'm on the agenda maybe later.
You are on the agenda later.
So,
and you should know this, as the town representative, one of our town mayors, Derek Wood, has provided us food So, yeah, so
Okay.
that's also good. Yeah, that would be part of your
Okay.
goals.
Thank you for telling me.
No problem.
So, Charity Chandra Jefferson, this is my second year. And I'm just gonna give you a little hint because the town of Dumfries is in Prince William County. He owns a food truck.
Yes.
So let's try to asterisk by that. But if you're a good cook or if you bake,
I can
just
bake.
no chocolate. I'm
Take it all. Take it all.
Good evening, everyone. I am Delegate Brianna Sewell, and I am one of 3 members of the Virginia General Assembly who gets the pleasure of serving with you all on the MBTA.
Thank you. And I think everyone met Ms. Backman, but how about you? Good morning.
Good evening, Monica Backman, the CEO of MBTA. I've been here since 2014.
Wonderful. And I am Phyllis Randall. I am Chair at Large of Loudoun County, Virginia, and I have been pleased to be Chair of the Authority. I am in my 3rd term, my 9th year, but my 5th year of chairing the Authority. You will also hear me say, because it's the God's honest truth, I do get to chair the best county in the United States of America, Loudoun County, Virginia. So I'm just gonna put that out there, right? Hey, start off the year right. Just start it off right.
Have another election. Saying.
And I did forget that. I did forget that. All right. Well, I do thank everyone for attending. We're going to start off first. We're going to do our public comments because we do that at the first meeting of every year. I will ask that if you are on the if you're a remote participant, that you remain on mute till you are called. That would be great. We do welcome everybody, no kidding, to this meeting, and we always invite the community to provide us feedback. We want to know what you're thinking and why. And so as we start to tackle what's all the projects we're going to do in 2025 and do congestion relief relative to costs, it's always good to do it first with public comments. And as we talk about all of our multimodal activities, we want to know what the public is feeling and thinking. If you've already provided comments, and a lot of people have, using our online form or through voicemail, we want to say thank you for that. We've also received some comments through snail mail. So that's actually good also. So if you're participating at all, we want to thank you. I do want to note that we have another elected official in the room. Has been the authority before, but she's a town mayor, and so there's only one town seat. But I do want to welcome and thank my colleague in Loudoun County and my friend, the mayor of Leedsburg, Kelly Burke, for being here with us today. So thank you, Mayor Burke. If you signed up to speak already, we're going to ask you to do that right now. We're going to start with people who are here in person. You have 3 minutes to speak. When the timer. Oh, we have okay, then they're all virtual. Okay, thank you, ma'am. When you have 3 minutes to speak, can they see the timer on their screen? Okay, so watch the timer. Usually I don't stop people when you get like the 2 minutes, 30 seconds. I won't stop anyone because that messes up your flow. But when you get to 3 minutes, you'll hear the timer go off, and then I will stop you with that time. After you finish your comments, you're free to stay on and watch us for the remainder of the meeting, or you can continue to watch the meeting remotely live on the MBTA's YouTube channel. And a recording of this meeting will be posted. We will begin with the people we have are all virtual. Right now, we have 3. They are Alan Munchak, Kevin O'Brien, and Stuart Schwartz. So if we can get Mr. Munchak on the line, that'd be great.
Good evening. I'm Alan Muchnick, City of Manassas resident. MBTA proclaims multimodality and core values of equity, safety, and sustainability, but it takes effective policies and performance measures to rise above empty buzzwords and greenwashing. For instance, MBTA still lacks a complete streets policy, and it doesn't track and report greenhouse gas emissions generated by its funded projects. When counting the active mobility lane miles funded by MBTA, it's greenwashing to combine the 70% and 30% projects and to count the replacement active mobility facilities in road widening projects. Do we advance equity, safety, and sustainability by building and perpetuating wide and fast commercial roadways that injure or kill hundreds of pedestrians annually, increase vehicle miles traveled, and promote more auto-dependent sprawl? Is it equitable, sustainable, or cost-effective to spend sales tax and other non-motoring revenue to expand roads in the outer Nova counties so more people who work in Nova or DC can commute in single occupant vehicles from localities beyond Nova. VDOT's Nova District office has recently estimated that it would cost roughly $14 billion to build the active mobility facilities already described in adopted Nova locality plans and not part of a larger transportation project now under development. Yet, according to MBTA's Nova Gateway project tracking website, during 16 fiscal years, MBTA has so far awarded only about 3.5% of $3.8 billion in regional funds to 11 standalone active mobility projects. Of the 105 projects that have so far actually received MBTA regional money, less than 2.3% of the $2.4 billion allocated has flowed to a mere 7 standalone active mobility projects. Thus, at MBTA's historic rate of allocating regional funds for standalone projects, it would take roughly 1,700 years to fully fund Nova's already planned active mobility facilities. MBTA could receive more equitable, safe, and sustainable projects to evaluate for funding if the authority were to require each locality or agency to hold an advertised public hearing before the relevant government body endorses any project for MBTA-related funding, including from the CMAQ and RSTP programs. Presently, in localities without a transportation commission, such project funding submissions are often developed behind closed doors and simply placed on the governing body's consent agenda. Requiring advertised public hearings well before the governing body endorsement could alter the mix of submitted projects, such as more standalone projects, active mobility projects, as well as modify and expand the scope of projects submitted. Lastly, MBTA should increase transparency and public trust by posting all procedures of its regional jurisdiction and agency coordinating committee on its website. Thank you for this public comment opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Kevin O'Brien.
Good evening and Happy New Year to members of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Kevin O'Brien, and I am testifying tonight on behalf of the Washington Area Bicyclists Association, or WABA, and it's more than 4,000 members across Northern Virginia and the Washington metro area. NVTA has played an important role in supporting alternatives to single occupancy car travel by admirably funding critical transit, bicycle, and complete streets projects. NVTA is saying all the right things about safety, sustainability, and equity. Members like Fairfax County Chairman Jeff McKay have remarked that, quote, we won't have a robust economy without a more sustainable transportation network. But the authority is not fully following through on its promises to do things differently and more effectively. Far too much money, roughly 60% of funding to date, continues to go to expanding roadway capacity that we know does nothing to improve travel conditions over the long term. Instead, more roads fuel ongoing auto-dependent sprawl, induced demand, and continued congestion. It exacerbates the epidemic of road violence and skyrocketing maintenance backlog, and it perpetuates the affordability crisis by pushing more and more people farther and farther from jobs, schools, work, and other destinations. A recent study found that having to drive for more than 50% of one's out-of-home activities is linked to a decrease in life satisfaction. Put simply, we can't pave our way out of this reality. For the good of our regional economy and for the well-being of our people, we need to double down on providing more and better alternatives here in 2025. It can be hard to picture anything other than a continuation of the car-dominated status quo, but good examples of different pathways forward abound if we have the courage to look and the political will to act. An important first step is to stop rubber stamping projects developed behind closed doors that have not been advertised to the public for comment and input. Another is for NVTA to perform its own more objective, clear-eyed analysis of the cost-benefit of projects and no longer accept at face value promises that just one more lane will solve the traffic problem. Transit, trails, sidewalks, and yes, bike lane projects have all been shown to have greater bang for your buck versus capacity expansion projects, with added benefits like CO2 reduction and encouraging more physical activity to move. Now is the time to get smarter with our increasingly constrained budgets. The continued vitality, vibrancy of our communities relies on people walking and biking around them, not driving through them. NVTA is a crucial arbiter of a new, more sustainable, more inclusive, and healthier transportation system. Let's ensure our dollars, not just our words, better reflect our values and vision. We look forward to continuing to work with you and others towards getting us there in 2025 and beyond. Thank you again for the opportunity to share tonight.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. And our last speaker is Stuart Swartz.
Thank you, Chair Randall and authority members. We appreciate this annual opportunity to provide feedback. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We do share the concerns of the other two speakers, although we also note that last year more candidate projects recognized that walkable, bikeable, transit-friendly communities are the best solution to the region's transportation challenges, not bigger roads. We encourage the authority to continue this trend. Positive recent examples include the Crystal City to DCA multimodal connection, Route 1 BRT, Duke Street Transitway, safer complete streets for downtown Falls Church and Fairfax City, and the Franconia Springfield passenger rail bypass. We're also cautiously optimistic about your BRT network study, so long as it doesn't shy away from converter lane approaches to arterials and is tied to transit-oriented development. For over 27 years, CSG has promoted walkable, bikeable, mixed-use, inclusive transit-oriented communities as the most sustainable, efficient, and equitable way to grow. It's a vision adopted by all of the jurisdictions at COG in the Region Forward Plan and in subsequent activities. Today, in the face of post-pandemic economic challenges, a housing affordability crisis, and climate change, this transit-oriented development approach to growth and transportation is more important than ever. Office vacancies have been far lower in TOD zones than in suburban office parks. Combined housing and transportation costs and per capita VMT are lower. And transit and TOD are key to attracting and retaining the next generation workforce and companies. I recently asked Hampton Roads officials what was happening with young people who they were losing young people on a net basis. And they said the answer was, we don't have enough transit, we don't have enough bike lanes, we don't have enough cool urban spaces. So we strongly recommend your support for transit-oriented future in your strategic plan and for dedicated metro and local transit funding to support it. The plan must also fully recognize induced demand and better address it in your planning, demand forecasting, and project selection. According to the Federal Highway Administration, and I quote, any initial increases in travel speeds are temporary, and traffic-related air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions ultimately increase as a result of adding new lanes. Building additional roadway capacity induces more vehicle travel, close quote. NVTA models only account for a portion of induced demand from road widening. This should be fixed. And you should also better account for the reduction of vehicle trips and VMT provided by compact land use planning near transit and accessible activity centers. The strategic plan must also commit to meeting the region's climate goal, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. Transportation, as we know, is the region's largest source of planet heating emissions, and multiple studies, including by TPB, have confirmed that even with a rapid transition to electric vehicles, we must also reduce per capita vehicle miles traveled 20% to 30%. Yet NVTA's transaction plan would actually increase per person VMT and resulting emissions. Last spring, staff noted that it's expanding its commitment to alternative congestion reducing solutions that reduce dependency on driving, and you've added staffing. That's terrific. And now we want to center that commitment in terms of addressing induced demand, the region's climate commitments, and projects to support a walkable, mixed-use, transit-oriented future. Lastly, I want to note the tragedy in Los Angeles and argue that requires our urgent action. Thank you.
Mr. Swartz, can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. You did that often. We do appreciate it. So we really do appreciate the comments from the public. It is valuable, helpful feedback. I might have more comments later about some of the stats that were presented, but we need that feedback. And so thank you. And again, if speakers or anyone else like to continue to watch, they can stay on the line or they can watch on the NVTA YouTube channel. And now we're going to transition to the authority meeting, and we're going to start by talking about the NVTA report that just came out for everyone. It doesn't have it. There's someone on the table over there. You may want to pick it up. Mr. Hillerich, Miss Hillerich, I'm sorry, would you like to come to the table? How are you? Did you do this again this time?
Yes.
It looks amazing.
With my colleague Sharara Faisal, and we are especially excited about this iteration of the report because we did this all in-house this year.
Wow.
So all the design, all the photography, everything is done in-house. And you'll notice on the cover, which is pretty apropos to this new office location.
We
That
have
was
your
just
new
taken on our
logo.
rooftop. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got our new logo taken on the rooftop, and we waited just for a metro train to come into the cube this image, but and we're really taking the approach, it's new year, new us, new everything, new report, and now calling it the MBTA report instead of just the annual report, because that's kind of boring, right? So now we've got the MBTA report, and we're just really excited to share this with you all. This is hot off the press, literally today. This came off the printer. So just picked them up just a couple hours ago, and it just really is going to be something that we'll be able to disperse to diverse audiences across the Commonwealth and really just throughout the year. So I'd like to dive in by talking about the main bulk of this report, and that's truly our impact in our investments. So overall, with $4.9 billion invested into the transportation network, that is resulting in a $7.5 billion economic impact. These numbers are coming from our latest economic impact analysis that Shri will be presenting next month. So we can think of this as a little bit of a teaser before Shri gets really into more details about the findings from the economic impact analysis. But I did want to take just a minute here to highlight some of these findings because they are really important and they're really incredible to see, especially just laid out on a page like this. So when we look at a $4.9 billion investment and see job creations in the thousands, 43,000 jobs created, travel time savings in the millions, 500 million hours of travel time saved. We know that these investments, and everyone in this room knows that these investments are really changing the lives of those who live, work, and play in the Northern Virginia region. Every single dollar committed, but $5 billion is a lot of money. And this impact isn't quantified by just a 10%, 50%, or a 100% ROI, but a 300% ROI that's measured by our economic impact and monetary savings across the region. So these findings really demonstrate MBTA's goals and the region's goals of enhancing mobility, improving accessibility, and resiliency across the region. On the investments page, that other pamphlet page that's folded in, you'll see the allocations by jurisdiction. And these are allocations of the 30% and 70% funding combined that bring us to that 4.9 billion. But to break it out as the 70% from our regional revenue is 3.8 billion that's gone toward 139 projects that have all been approved by this board through 7 separate funding cycles. And then $1.1 billion from the local distribution fund has gone to 285 projects. And those are the projects that you all are funding in your own localities for your unique transportation needs. Combined, that brings us to 424 projects and counting. And these projects in that chart on that back page demonstrate how the money is going toward different modes. But I want you all to keep in mind that these are primary transportation modes, and every project we fund has multiple implications across several modes of transportation. So we have a little disclaimer under that chart as well, just to keep that in mind, that it's just because it's listed as a transit project might have bike and pedestrian implications and so on. Additionally, we wanted to call out in this report our involvement with federal funding, and especially in the CMAQ and RSTP funding recommendations that we're making to the Commonwealth Transportation Board of over $1 billion. And that's going toward 170 projects. So we're proud to be part of recommending that critical funding toward critical projects. So how do we get there? And you all in this room are well aware of our processes in place of investing this money and really making an impact on the region. But this type of information is critical for so many audiences who aren't aware of how it's actually done. So starting with transaction as a long-range transportation plan that's updated every 5 years, that really lays the groundwork. for funding projects within the 6-year program every 2 years. And most recently adopting last year's 6-year fiscal 24 through 2029 6-year program for 700 million for 24 projects last year. So we wanted to include that aspect and where the money was going in each of those jurisdictions and to VRE as well. On the progress page, I think we can all agree and all love celebrating project progress. When all these projects receive funding on the staff side, we're continuously tracking them, making sure they're staying on track. And they just like to bring me in though when it's time to put a shovel in the ground or cut a ribbon, but it's a lot more important than just that. It's really about supporting infrastructure's improvements and really supporting the projects that are truly making a difference toward the lives of everyone across the region and those who enter and exit Northern Virginia on a daily basis. But we know that when we're cutting the ribbon toward each of these projects, which is why we included this imagery here, we're reducing congestion, providing more travel options, and improving accessibility across the region. So we thought it was important to highlight our work that, no, it's not just a photo op, but we do really like when we get to cut ribbons because that means we're opening projects and moving more people. As we plan for the future, we're really taking a proactive approach, and that's through several initiatives, but namely through bus rapid transit and building plans for a connected BRT system across the region. Additionally, partnering with our VDOT and DRPT for the Regional Multimodal Mobility Program. We have so many acronyms in transportation, but RM3P has also had a couple milestones recently with launching a commuter parking information system app just a couple months ago, and that's a pilot to help people find parking spots at different commuter lots. And then next month, we'll be launching another application called Go My Way VA that helps, or instead of helps, incentivizes drivers to take modes of travel other than driving alone. So that will be another pilot that we will be launching next month as well. And there's more to come with RM3P, but this page really speaks to our involvement with how do we move people more efficiently, effectively using modern transit, modern technology to do so. Now we flip over to the multimodal page. I love this page because it demonstrates our involvement in actually delivering multimodal transportation solutions. It seems like multimodal is our favorite word here at MBTA, but that word doesn't stretch sometimes as far as we want it to go. And people sometimes think that we prioritize particular modes of transportation that are not fully multimodal. So we wanted to really be clear on this page that it's not just one mode, it's the whole network and whole system. And most namely calling out our investments in public transit. So 500 million going toward rail projects at Metro, VRE to VPRA, 880 million on bus rapid transit. And that's just 638 of that toward the Richmond Highway BRT project. So the BRT aspect and the widening combined. And then also we wanted to take a section and call out the investments in our local bus services at 300 million plus. And all this, we just want to continue to see this growing. These investments really continue to grow. And also when keeping in mind to the point I made earlier, this is direct money on these particular, like directly to Metro, directly to BRT, but all of the investments we've made have implications toward these particular categories. Now I'll close things out with mentioning our leading Nova Forward page, because while this is a very attractive page, it really speaks to the work that we're doing on the staff side, the work that the authority at this boardroom table are doing, and the work that we're doing with our partners to really bring this region into the future. And we closed it out with a new motto or slogan that we've been using in our communications. And that's, we're not just planning for the future, we're making it happen. And we can really confidently say that as seeing all these projects come to fruition and seeing an impact at this caliber, we really are making it happen. So I hope you all will take some of these copies with you, and please let us know if you would like more of them, but it's also available online. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This it's beautiful. I love that it was done all in house. And I love this picture. It's a fantastic picture. Authority members, do you have questions? Yes, Mr. McKay.
Just very briefly, very well done. I love the picture on the cover too. I would just say on a humorous note, on the leading Northern Virginia forward map, that a lot of jurisdictions have moved into Fairfax County, including Manassas Park for the first time. We just welcome. That makes one heck of a large voting block. Very large.
That is very true. We may want to, they want to look at that. Yeah, Mr. McKay has all power according to this map.
So much real estate. in Fairfax County. Everybody can see it all. Yeah.
Anybody else? So, I have a question. And first of all, I literally take copies of this and I give it to our staff. I distribute it on the board at our next meeting. And so it's really helpful for people to know what we're doing. And we put them at the front desk when you walk into the county building. So we have these all over loud, and just so people know. When I listen to the public comments, and I really did appreciate those public comments, and I look at the numbers, those two things don't match. So what do you think's happening? And maybe this is a question for later, that the amount of money spent in other transportation modes, it's literally more than a quarter and that doesn't even account the transportation technology money that we sometimes discuss. What do you think the disconnect is happening with, and Ms. Backman, this may be a question for anyone, and again, maybe for later. What do you think the disconnect is happening where some of our constituents are making, according to our numbers, not completely accurate assessments and assumptions about where the money is going, because there are people who just really do not know how much money is going to other transit modes. I mean, if you look just at BRT alone, that is a huge amount of money. So, I don't know that if there is something we should be doing, I should be doing as MBTA chair, to tell our story a little more, because the numbers themselves don't match the perception of some people. So just to think about that, because we're doing great work and we're doing a lot of work in other multimodal efforts. And we're doing it largely because we did hear from the public. And so we want the public to know that we heard them, that we took it in, and that we've adjusted. And I'm not sure we're telling our story as effectively as possible. That's just my thoughts. Okay.
So Madam Chair, what I will note is one thing we always try to emphasize is multimodal. One thing I always hear though, well, as long as you fund roads, you're a part of a problem and not a solution. Although you have all of this money on bus rapid transit and you're funding the W&O&D and you're doing this BRT study and you do these transportation technology projects, et cetera, as long as we still fund road projects, it creates an issue. So when we try to tell the story, sometimes it's, yeah, that's good, but. And for this region, we often emphasize that there is no one size fit all solution. When we have the road projects, and for VDOT's requirements, if you're doing a road, you have to have a trail and a sidewalk. But then it's like, well, you should have more independent bike path facility. Well, we're funding the W&O&D trail. And yes, we do talk about what the localities are funding with their 30%, because usually when we receive applications is for projects that are of significant cost on a lot of instances. But we are truly multimodal. Two things we always have said We strive for geographic balance and modal distribution. We funded the CC to DCA, and I know we had a lot pedestrian bridge. We had a lot of connector, a lot of conversations about that. But I do think because we fund road projects, it opens us up to criticism. When the reality is, and this is something that the COG State of the Commute survey, if you're low income,
sure, that's right,
you're more likely to drive.
Yeah.
Because the options, the diverse modal options aren't there.
Which is actually different in this area than it is in most places. Usually, if you're near transit, the real estate is less. Here in Northern Virginia, if you're near transit, the real estate is much more. And so you're right, people who have don't have those incomes do live further out, and so they have to be able to get around.
And we balance a lot of things. We care about climate change. We care about people being able to feed their families and get to work and things of that nature. So we balance a lot of things, and it's important, and it all plays into the economy. But yes, we do fund road projects. And one thing I tell people, buses don't fly. They are not flying. Buses use the roads too.
That's
and
right.
if we want to make sure that taking bus transit is a competitive option to get people out of their single occupied vehicles, the buses need to be able to compete with the SOV. And sometimes that's a story that, you know, some don't like to really hear, because that means that the buses need to be able to, their headways and frequencies, they need to be able to get you there quicker than one could get in their car.
Well, I agree with all that. I mean, and it really was a question, because again, maybe there's something that the chair and the vice chair of the authority or the authority members need to be talking about or doing more often. I don't know. It's something we can brainstorm to tell the story, because we're doing the work, and you want to let people know the work you're doing. And then there's, if you look at Sheriff Jefferson in my counties, you know, there's very rural parts of our county that you're just not going to put, there's not going to be a rail that goes to parts of our counties. It's just not. And if they're going to get around, they are going to be road projects. So I think also sometimes when you look at, you know, sometimes people can think of Nova as, you know, starting at Alexandria and Arlington and stopping in the middle of Loudoun, or stopping just in Manassas, and not, those counties have a lot of rural, 2/3 of my county is rural. So I don't know that that's always appreciated either. So anybody else? Thank you, as always. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to go to our consent agenda items. Before we go to our consent agenda items, I have a question for our attorneys. Where are you all at? Right behind me. Is it legal, and if so possible, to combine the consent agenda item, or do we have to go consent agenda item by consent agenda item by consent agenda item? Can we say, can I read the items on a consent agenda, not have a separate motion for all of them, and just say, these are the items on the consent agenda, and pass them as one consent agenda item?
Yes, you can put it to a motion to vote
All of them together. I won't do that today because this is, it's a new thing, but it's just, I was thinking the other day, like, why don't we do these one at a time? Unless each locality just wants to talk about their item some, but otherwise it might be a good moving along a little bit. Yeah. Okay, well, from here on out, that's what we're going to do without objection. Until then, though, we are going to go through the consent agenda items. And the first consent agenda item is the meeting, well, the meeting, obviously. Huh? Okay. Is there a motion to, I will make a motion to approve the meeting notes from the meeting minutes from December 12th, 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, hey, Senator Boysko. Seconded by Senator Boysko. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, and I'm assuming we're going to have 3 people who abstain because they weren't here. So we have 3 abstentions, or 3 abstentions, exactly, 3 abstentions. Thank you. And the abstentions is Mr. DeFerrani, Mayor Gaskins, and Mayor Mensing. Those were the abstentions, just because they literally weren't here. And then item number 6 is the approval of the Arlington County's Boston Metro Station West Interest Project. Mr. DeFerrante, I'm assuming you want to make a motion on that.
Yes, Madam Chair. I would like to move the authority approval of proposed standard project agreement 22-142-2, Arlington County's Boston Marymount MU Metro Rail Station West in accordance with NVDA's approved project description sheet as appended to the standard project agreement and authorize the chief executive officer sign on behalf of the authority.
Motion's made. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded by Chair Jefferson. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. The next item is item number 7, which is in Fairfax County. It's the Fairfax County Parkway widening. Mr. McKay, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move authority approval of the proposed project, standard project agreement 2020-16-4. Fairfax County Parkway widening Route 29 to Nome Sport project in accordance with NVTA's approved project description sheet as appended to the standard project agreement and authorize the chief executive officer to sign on behalf of the authority.
Motion's made. Is there a second from anyone from Fairfax County? Mayor Reed, you want to second that?
I would love to second
You would
that.
love to second that. I knew you would. I knew you would. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Item number 8 is also Fairfax County Parkway widening. Mr. McKay.
Yes, I move authority approval of the proposed standard project agreement 2022-16-5. Fairfax County Parkway widening Nome's Court to Route 23 project in accordance with NVTA's approved project description sheet as appended to the standard project agreement and authorize the chief executive officer to sign on behalf of the authority.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
I second
There you
that.
go. There we go. Motion made and seconded. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Item number 9 is the meeting schedule for 2025. Everyone take a look at that meeting schedule. And see, we will obviously have our August break, all for new members, all just about all of our regional bodies, and even at this point, many national bodies go on break in August. And so we don't really care what happens around here in August. We're not going to be here. So, but beyond that, does anyone have any questions or thoughts on that schedule? If not, I will move the authority adoption of the meeting schedule for the calendar year 2025 as presented.
Second.
Check to second that. Seconded by the vice chair. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. And then the last action item is the annual adoption of electronic meeting policy. Mr. Long, do you want to talk about this at all before you do it, before we do it? Or do the no changes? Okay, wonderful. I move the authority annual approval of policy 26, electronic participation in meetings.
Second.
Second, motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Long, just remind the authority members, how much notice do they need to give you to participate electronically?
During the quorum call.
During the quorum call. Okay, sounds good. All right. Any other discussion? All right, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion will pass unanimously. Now we're going to go to the action items, and the first action item is the appointment of the chair and vice chair. I'm going to move to the nominating committee to take it from here and let the at least for the appointment of the chair, and I'm going to assume the vice chair also, that the nominating committee make those recommendations and make those motions. And so I think, Mr. McKay, I think you're the senior member of the nominating committee.
Most seasoned.
Most seasoned member, I'm sorry,
I
most
am.
seasoned.
Say I conferred with Mayor Davis Younger and Mayor Reed about this, and notwithstanding the comments made earlier in the meeting, I would move that the authority appoint Phyllis Randall as chair and Mr. Snyder, Councilmember Snyder, as vice chair of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority for calendar year 2025.
And I would second that emotion.
Your motion?
Yes, I will just say, there was a fierce campaign led by many for these two positions, but it was the opinion of the nominating committee that if it's not broken, don't fix it. And we appreciate the leadership of Chair Randall, Councilmember Snyder over the past couple of years, and wish to continue that and hope that our colleagues will support that.
It was a really tough campaign. The campaign trail was tough. I knocked on lots of doors. It was really hard. Thank you, though. Really, thank you. Want to call for the vote?
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I will
Madam Chair,
abstain.
that motion carries.
I will abstain. Thank you.
With no one opposed.
No one opposed. I will abstain. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, seriously. Mrs. Simon, would you like to say, have any words for your inauguration?
No, just a big thank you. And this really is a great group. We've achieved a lot so far, and I think we're just beginning. So.
Yep, I would
Very
associate
excited.
myself with his comments. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go to the appointing the town member. And I think that she's introduced herself already. We can have, in the discussion why the town member doesn't vote, but I think I might go to the supervisor from Fairfax, since it sits in your county. Would you like to make a motion?
I would be delighted to. Madam Chairman, I move authority appointment of Linda Colbert, Mayor of the town of Vienna, as the town member of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority for calendar year 2025.
I second that motion.
You second that motion. You were the seconder tonight. Thank you. Discussion on that motion. So we have this discussion every time as to why the town member is not a voting member. And let me say that, in my opinion, the only thing a town member doesn't do is vote, because you have a really just the same and equal amount of input, thoughts. I mean, every other way. It is just that you're representing every town in Virginia, which is hard to know what every town in Virginia might want. And then at any one given time, if you are located in Fairfax, it may mean that Fairfax has even more of a vote on the authority. So that's why it was made to be a non-voting member. It's also the only position in MVTA where you cannot appoint somebody else to come, right? You can't have anybody else on your board. So it is you or nobody, ma'am.
I will not go anywhere on this.
You will not go anywhere in those days. We do not. I'm not quite sure why it was written like that, but
Okay.
yeah, it is you. Yay! All right. Any more comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. All right, we're going to do the adoption of the bylaws. Mr. Long, do you have anything? We did have some reading of the bylaws and things like that. But have we read them twice?
This is the second.
This is the second
Chair.
reading, okay.
For a quick recap for our newer members, as you scan through the change tracking version that's in your packet, most of the changes are chair and vice chair versus chairman and vice chairman. What we did with this update, and this is the first update since 2021, is we increase the flexibility for the authority to adopt a schedule prior to tonight, or the first meeting in January. We clarified the public hearing and open meetings verbiage so that as the state law changes, we can change our policies and we don't have to come back and do a bylaws change. Because bylaws are the only item that require 2 readings in front of the authority before they're adopted. We clarified that town members can serve multiple consecutive terms, and we improved the committee charge descriptions with lessons learned over the last 10 years. It clarified that NVTA's chair appoints the committee chair and the committee vice chairs. And the finance and GPC, we removed the requirement that 3 jurisdiction members need to vote in an affirmative for the committee action to be affirmed. We left that in for PPC because PPC is the final stop basically for project recommendations, and we thought it would be appropriate for the jurisdictions that to have that level of support. We also clarified the appointment for the TAC appointees or the TAC members and clarified the CTV's role. The authority appoints 6 members of the 9-member committee, and Commonwealth Transportation Board appoints 3. And the chair of the CTV. And finally, for TAC and PCAC, if they don't reach consensus, we now ask for a majority and a minority report from those 2 committees. I will note there was some discussion last month on this that might increase the workload for staff. However, they typically reach consensus, and we recommend leaving this change in because we think it would be good to formally have both views were the committee not to reach consensus. And with that, as long as there are no changes, you can vote to adopt this tonight. If there is a change, then we would discuss the change and we would bring it back to you in February.
All right, so there were not major changes, but there were some for the bylaws. So does anyone have any changes that they'd like to see made tonight or like to see made because we couldn't vote on it tonight if you did? Are we sure? All right, then seeing none, I will, I've lost my motion. Seeing none, Mr. Longy's gonna make, you're gonna make a motion.
Yeah, I move adoption of the bylaws amendments as presented.
And I will second it. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. Mr. Longy, thank you and your team for all the work on the bylaws. We really do appreciate it. And then the last action item is the approval of recommendations to update the scope of a project receiving CMAQ funds for the city of Alexandria. Ms. Blackman, would you like to have any comments before we go to Mayor Gaskins to make this motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be brief. The city of Alexandria have CMAQ funds on a project previously known as Mount Vernon Avenue North multimodal and safety improvements. Now it's an intersection improvements at Mount Vernon Avenue and Glebe Road. The city has used this money, which is a part of, the project is a part of their transportation master plan to do safety enhancements and some operational improvements along the corridor. Using the CMAQ funds, the city did advance to the planning phase and they developed some conceptual designs and cost estimates. However, during the community engagement, it became clear that the engineering required for the intersection improvements significantly increased the project cost. As a result, the project scope has been revised to include 2 separate projects, one being the intersection improvement at Mount Vernon Avenue North and Glebe Road, and then intersection improvements at Mount Vernon Avenue and Russell Road / Executive Avenue.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Mayor Gaskins, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move authority approval to recommend the project scope update of UPC 114864, previously Mount Vernon Avenue North multimodal and safety improvements, now the intersection improvements at Mount Vernon North and Glebe Road, which is a recipient of CMAQ funds.
Wonderful. I will second that. Discussion on that motion. None. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. And that concludes our action items for tonight. Woohoo! Ms. Gaskins, I heard that. Yay. Yay. All right, we're going to go to our discussion items. And the first discussion items is our General Assembly update. Ms. Baynard is with us. Miss Senator Boysko is with us. Delegate Sewell is with us as well. And normally at this time, they would be seeing us virtually because they'd be in Richmond. So we are sad that they're, for the reason they're not in Richmond, but we're really happy that they are with us this evening. So Ms. Baynard, I will pass it to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to give you an update on a couple of things going on in the General Assembly. Two bills that have come across our transom, many bills to come, as we all know. Two key updates on deadlines. The deadline to pre-file bills was moved to Monday. Senate budget amendments are still due tomorrow, and House budget amendments are due on Monday. So I will be examining those and sharing with you all anything that might impact the MBTA. There are two bills that we don't, GPC didn't have an opinion on, but we wanted to share them with you all and hope that you'll bring comments back. One is Senate Bill 1007 from Senator Surville, brought to you because it does include the NVTA in it. Senator Surville, as many of us who've been here at NVTA has known, has long been looking for a dedicated funding source for bike, ped, and safety improvements that are standalones, that are not part of a larger project. He also has discussed at the SJ28, the Northern Virginia Study of Transit Needs and Funding, and at DMV Moves, the concept of taxing private parking spaces, not the fee to park if a fee is imposed, but annually the space itself. And so the bill would institute a 50-cent per space tax annually for every private parking space, lot, garage, or other in Planning District 8, except for single-family detached homes. The money would be then given to NVTA and as a sub-fund to program that money based on our prioritization metrics, as addition to some ones that he names in the bill: safety, environmental, and others. And so that's the bill. It has been assigned to Senate Transportation.
So
We
the
don't have
bill,
a
the money is paid by the owner of the property. Who
Correct.
has the parking
Sorry.
space.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's paid by the owner of the property. We don't have a fiscal impact statement, so I don't have an idea how much this would raise. I want all of your sort of jurisdictions to take a look at it, give me any feedback back. Once we're back in person again, hopefully on Monday, I do want to talk with Senator Surville, like how soon does he think he's going to have a fiscal impact statement? Because again, is the juice worth the squeeze? And what else he may be hearing. So that's that bill. I'm going to stop. See
Yeah.
if anybody has any questions.
Do you have any, we had a pretty robust discussion about this in GPC. So do we have questions about this bill? Well, would you do me one more favor, Tracy?
Sure.
Would you detail how MBTA would be involved?
Sure. So he has asked NVTA as the regional transportation planning body and also appropriator of projects to be the implementer of the bill in terms of the funding. So NVTA would establish a prioritization process, would then seek applications from our members for projects, and then those would be evaluated per the adopted metrics. And then you would program that money on a 2-year, 6-year, whatever you decide to do, basis as you do your 70% now. So NVTA becomes the decision maker on how and where the funds would be spent.
How would we, because the decision point we have right now that we are given for the 70% is congestion relief relative to cost.
Correct.
How would we make a decision, Monica, maybe this is you, how would we make a decision on how we give money for bike and ped? Because it wouldn't be congestion relief. So how would what decision points would we use to distribute that money?
Madam Chair, staff, we would have to develop some performance measures and bring them to you, have weighted performance measures really, and bring them to this body for your approval. What would be the priorities based on performance measures that we would use?
And I would say, reading directly from the bill, the methodology shall be based on an objective and quantifiable analysis that considers safety mitigation, economic development, likely uses of such infrastructure, and equity. So in many ways, it's set up like our congestion relief language that's currently in the code, but you would, again, MBTA would have to develop specific metrics that.
I guess when I'm thinking about, when you think about Chair Jefferson's county and my county and those rural areas, I don't think we would ever qualify for bike ped money because we're so far out. The number of people who use those would be much less probably than the number of people who use them in one of our inner jurisdictions. So that would be an interesting discussion.
There is also language in this bill, like our original code section, that sets up a long-term benefit analysis for funds raised in every jurisdiction.
Okay.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
yes,
I just
ma'am.
have a question for Monica and or Tracy. Would the legislation include funding to increase the capacity for NVTA? Because I think
Yeah, I asked that too.
here is.
That's a great question. I
pretty
asked that,
busy.
yeah.
So would that include?
It's actually silent to being able to use for administrative costs. It's silent on that. Our code, our current code section permits funding to be used for administrative costs.
I asked that very question. That's a great question. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
absolutely. Other questions? Mr. DeFrente?
Is there a House, either?
A companion bill?
Is there a Senate co-sponsor or co-patron or anybody in the House?
Right now, no. It's just Senator Servell, and all the bills aren't in, so I don't know if there's a House companion to this or not yet.
That would, I mean, I'm interested by the substantive discussion, but unless there is a other chamber and both parties, it seems to me that this would be a longer term conversation.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, a bill can still cross over even if there's not a companion bill in the other chamber, correct? Yeah.
I wasn't saying it couldn't pass. This seems a new approach and therefore you might go farther with both parties, particularly with this, with the government.
The other question, because I asked that, the other question I asked was what subcommittees and then full committees does this go to on,
So
well, on the
it's
Senate
Madam
side?
Chair, it goes to my transportation. Successful would go to the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee.
Okay. Okay.
And then if it goes over to the House, it would start in House
It's House
Transportation,
Delaney's committee.
probably House Finance, but would end up in House Appropriations.
I just think the chair, sorry, Madam Chair, but the chair of the committee, we could do learnings for whether this is an operable idea over the coming years. I can't, you guys are in Richmond. I can't envision this passing this year and being signed. It just.
Madam Chair, I'll just say that there is an ongoing effort to reflect on our entire tax structure and system. We have a subcommittee, and a joint subcommittee between the House and the Senate that is taking into consideration all sorts of tax structures in the Commonwealth. That work won't be completed until next year at the very earliest, but perhaps it might be, you know, without making the determination today, but I could see that might be where it could land, but I'm just not sure yet. I don't know what the pleasure of the rest of the committee will be.
Well, Senator Boysko and authority members, what we said in GPC, and if anyone has a different thought, let's have that discussion, is that the authority is going to stay silent on this bill right now. We just don't, there's a lot of unknowns. We just have no idea, including cost, of what this is going to look like. And so until we just gather more information, we'll just stay silent on it for now, unless there's another opinion in the room. Mr. McKay.
I think that's absolutely the right thing to do and see if this gets any activity. I will say, Senator Servell reached out to our staff last week, at the end of the week, to ask for input. We provided some input. Our staff formally did. Some of that input's included in the bill. A good amount of it is still not. And I think there's more questions than there is answers. I mean, I appreciate the effort, but I just want to clarify one thing that was said, because the current bill exempts single family detached
Only, yeah.
So, you know, one of the things I would just suggest to Senator Servell is, from an equity standpoint, that really puts a huge burden on some of the lowest income people in our region who live in garden apartments, other, you know, housing besides single family detached. And, you know, that bill will be passed down through the rent to those tenants and also have an effect on affordable housing. And so I think this is a much larger conversation than just, do you tax parking spaces or not? And so, you know, my hope is if this does get some traction, since there's a lot of questions that maybe we'll get answers to during the session, but I doubt we'll have all those questions answered. That, you know, this could potentially be something analyzed after session 2 with more detail. I'm interested in the fiscal impact piece because I think you made a very good point. I have no idea how much revenue this could generate. I do know as you know, a jurisdiction that we are competing with trying to fill office space and trying to make sure our retail and our commercial segments in the county are strong. And I know there will be some industry challenges with that coming with this bill too, that have nothing to do with the localities or with transportation per se. And so I think the sooner we can get a fiscal impact, to understand if this battle is even worth it, is important. And then lastly, I'm suspect of NVTA being the entity that oversees this, and it has nothing to do with my total confidence in NVTA staff and the people around this table. But if the fiscal impact comes back and it's pretty low, to have NVTA deciding pedestrian bicycle micro projects within one jurisdiction and taking that authority outside of the hands of the jurisdiction that knows that particular community better than we do at a regional level, I think is a little bit of a stretch outside of the scope of what NVTA does, where we are a regional body doing large projects that traverse multiple jurisdictions in some cases. We can balance those against other projects in the region. This seems to me to be a little bit much more micro. And, you know, the other question I would ask is all those reviews that you mentioned, all the criteria that's going to be used to evaluate these projects, at what point does the administration of this become almost as much as the money generated in the projects built? And, you know, to me, it just cries out, just from a high level, the concept cries out, why not give this authority to the local governments as opposed to putting them in the hands of NVTA and the regional body? And so, I mean, that's just off the top of my head, the things that pop up, just having seen this a couple days ago. But I think this is something we've got to watch closely. And I think the concept behind it is not a terrible one, but there's a whole lot of implementation questions and a real question about whether NVTA should be playing a role in this or not.
So I've said to Chairman McKay before, I'm getting a little scared about how much he and I say the exact same thing, even when we don't talk to one another before. It's kind of freaking me out just a little bit. I agree with everything you just said, and I am uncomfortable with NVTA being involved, but the other maybe possibility is, you know, once we see this, where this goes, and I agree with Mr. DeFerente, you know, I applaud Senator Surville for trying something new and different and out the box. You know, whether something happens this year or not, this session is doubtful. But the other option or the other possibility is the money comes into NVTA, and although I prefer it not to, but the money comes into NVTA and it is allocated out to the localities, just like the 30% is based on jurisdiction size. And so the jurisdictions are not the ones, I mean, we're not the ones deciding, you know, who gets what bike or pet project. It just goes right back out to the jurisdictions through NVTA the same way the 30% does. And then they can decide for themselves. So, yeah, it seems like an exactly NVTC, exactly. And so I think this is a well-intentioned good first step, which is why I don't want to have an opinion on it yet. But I think there's a lot of questions to be answered, including especially the fiscal impact. Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the comments that have been made. I do think we have to be very sensitive to the comments we heard earlier this evening. And we need to be receptive as an authority to looking to how we can best expand the bike and ped facilities. So the questions about this particular proposal are all well-founded, and I agree with them all. But I think we need to be cautious about appearing to not be receptive to innovative ways to fund bike ped projects that don't take away from other projects that we're doing. That's the only additional comment I would make.
Thank you. Thank you. And then we have one other question, and you can answer this, Tracy, about making sure that, and this is a loose term, that localities are not double dipping, so that they're not getting the 30% money, use it for their bike and ped project, and then getting the 30 money if this came to fruition from here for that same project.
Correct. And that's something we discussed at GPC. And again, it will come down to the policies and processes that you all will adopt for this fund of money to make sure that doesn't happen. And I think the staff can figure out the best way to ask that question in the applications or how that's done. But yeah, that was the double dipping issue was a big question.
And then lastly, I learned tonight that our commissioners of revenues knows pretty close how many parking spaces we have in our jurisdictions. Whoa. So
I suspect for the fiscal impact statement that questions will come to you all asking that question, like how much, so that Department of Planning and Budget can do the analysis for the fiscal impact statement. So just heads up, that's coming. And that's, again, I think that from the comments I've heard so far, from what I've heard here, that's always the first question. How much money are we talking about? And I think once we see that, then I think that will drive what may or may not happen this session or whatever. So.
And I'd like to go to the next bill, which is House Bill 1982.
Yes, so some of you or all of you may remember a couple of years ago, Virginia Railway Express, VRE, worked out with Department of Public Rail and Transportation, Rail and Public Transportation. Wow, I just forgot that. DRPT had the discussion about the metrics that were being used for transit operators, how it wasn't the greatest fit for what VRE does. Worked out with DRPT the metrics that worked best for them, and there was the decision to allocate from the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund 3.5% for VRE. WMATA has already gets a specific percentage also. Hampton Roads Transit is advocating for a similar specific dedication of 2.5% for them out of the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund for their light rail system. So in theory, it's exactly like what happened with VRE, but there's a lot of questions on this one also, I'm just gonna say, that we don't know. For example, is the 2.5%, so for example, VRE's 3.5% was roughly about what they've been getting traditionally from the Mass Transit Fund. No more, no less. So it wasn't, a lot. Is this the same? Is the 2.5% for light rail the same? Good question. The way that they get to the 2.5% is 1% comes out of the operating side for the Mass Transit Fund, and then 1.5% comes out of capital. The reason this has raised a lot of questions for across the Commonwealth, but definitely here, is that DRPT has been noting that moving forward, we're getting a bit of a gap or disconnect between available revenues and capital and operating needs of local transit systems across the Commonwealth. So I've been asked, I don't know the answer, is this the right time to be taking another set of funds off the top? So a lot of questions. I need to talk to DRPT. I want to talk to HRT. Have they vetted this? Do they, want to see their math just so that we understand what's happening? As Chair Randall said, on the policy side, it's kind of hard to say no because VRE and WMATA have done it. But it's one thing to say it's the percentage is equal to what we get, or is this like you're going to get a lot more money than you're currently getting? You just don't know. So,
and we're going to stay silent on this one.
We're gonna hold we're not gonna have any comments. We just have a lot of questions. And this one was referred to, committee pending, but it'll likely go to House Transportation to start with.
Madam Chair, could I ask who the sponsor?
For sure, the sponsor for this one is Delegate Askew.
Okay.
And I believe there's going to be a Senate version, but it just hasn't posted yet.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Maynard. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Do we know the date I know you're going back down on Monday, but Ms. Backman, and do we know they go down there? and talk?
January 20, which I'm thinking of, January 27th.
It's a Sunday, isn't it?
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
So the Northern Virginia delegation meets on Mondays at 5, and that is Transportation Day. And so Chair Randall and Ms. Bachman will be there, as well as WMATA CEO Chair Randy Clark will be there.
Okay.
To
Jeff, you wanna
update
come-
our
you wanna come with
delegation
us?
on all
Wanna
things
come?
us.
Well, just come, you want to come?
See what happens.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate it. Draft Policy 30 update, Mr. Longi, and then you can just roll right into the Finance Committee reports as well, sir.
Thank you, Chair Randall. Respecting our newer members, I want to kind of summarize the staff report very quickly. This question is whether or not the authority should fund cost underestimates, overruns, and allow transfers between projects in the future. To summarize this question actually came up in 2015 and 2016. About a year's worth of work was done. This has been briefed to the committees and to the authority at prior meetings. In November, the authority asked staff to come back with a policy that says the authority will not fund cost underestimates, overruns, or allow transfers between projects. So adopting a policy of no is fairly easy, but the authority also asked for a petition process to be inserted in the policy for very rare circumstances. So with that background, we're bringing this to you today in January, so that as a discussion item for discussion, so that we can get your feedback. Additionally, we have additional committee presentations scheduled. We have been doing monthly discussions and presentations with the RJAC committee, basically since this has come up. So to be time efficient, I would just turn to the proposed policy. And again, this is a discussion item for tonight. The purpose statement's pretty clear. The purpose of this policy is to establish that project risks due to cost underestimates and/or cost overruns will not be absorbed by the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. And upon adoption of the policy, authority will not allow transfers of authority regional revenue funds between projects. The general section of the policy basically recants all the rationale as to why the authority thus far has gotten to this position. So then the next meat of it comes in with the petition process. One of the things we heard from the authorities committees, as well as from the authority and from individual members, is that the petition process should be there, but have a very high bar and not be used frequently. So again, we're proposing pretty clear language with that the project sponsor petitions for policy exemptions are not encouraged. Project sponsor petitions for policy exemptions will be examined rigorously, which goes back to, how we got to this point. And again, the feedback from the authority. Item D, 3D at the very bottom of the policy page, I think really sums up the prior discussions very well. It is the responsibility of the project sponsor to only submit a petition for which the project sponsor believes it can proficiently demonstrate factual circumstances supported in currently available and detailed records, demonstrating project conditions that are, and these are the key words that we have been working on over the last several months, project conditions that are unique, extraordinary in circumstance, and could not have been anticipated. One of the things that I worked very hard to do, although it always enters the discussion, is to not talk about scenarios. Because once you state a scenario, you've kind of started to define the implementation of a policy. On the rare occasions that we did start to discuss a scenario at the authority level or at the committee level, somebody said, no, that's not unique, or that should have been anticipated in Northern Virginia. We bump into this all the time. So again, the bar for the petition is is as directed high. The other thing, and that's why some of the earlier wording and the two earlier bullets is so important, is a petition has to be linked to the 2-year update for the 6-year program. One of the things that was very much identified was there is a very robust process that goes through to judge projects on their congestion reduction relative to cost as required by the state code. There's modeling processes that are used. The authority probably has one of the most robust processes in the state using those modeling aspects. If you take a project and you transfer money from one project that could have been improved in, I'm just going to say 2020, and move it to a project that you're looking for approval in 2027, you have actually disrupted 2 program processes. Likewise, if you're funding cost overruns or underestimates on a project that was approved many years ago, it's benchmarking to the other projects that were in competition on that cycle is suddenly thrown out of kilter. So hence the reason to lock a petition into a 2-year update. There is a lot of wording in section 3 that really helps reinforce that in terms that if a petition needs to be ready to be examined rigorously, we can't hold up the 2-year updates for a petition. So if a petition comes in, going back to the earlier wording, the project sponsor needs to be ready to carry it through. Finally, the petition will go through the same process that a project approval recommendation goes through. It'll go through the committees. It'll go to PPC. The CEO makes recommendations to the committees. It'll go to PPC. Ultimately, PPC, just as it does for all projects being funded with 70% funds, PPC will then make a recommendation to the authority.
Okay. Yeah, that was a lot. That was a great synopsis. Thank you. Questions? Thoughts, Mr. McKay?
Yeah, just one question. Help me understand why, if this policy was adopted, why a jurisdiction wouldn't potentially overestimate or put their estimate on the high end for a project so that they don't run into this problem and therefore tie up more funds than they need for a particular project that could be going to one in another jurisdiction. I mean, are you concerned at all about that being a byproduct of this policy, and what safeguards are in place to prevent that?
It's a very valid question, and it received a lot of discussion at all levels as we have been working through this. The biggest insurance on that essentially is the congestion reduction relative to cost factor, as well as the fact that the projects that are in the 2-year update that are applied for in the 2-year update are essentially competing them against each other using that factor. Today, the same question exists. A project sponsor could do that now. And we have seen project sponsors that return money when their project is done. Oftentimes a little bit, but they got their project done, didn't need to use all of the application. Some project sponsors, almost all of them actually bring in funding from other sources. NVTA is seldom the sole project funder, which was a big part of this as well, because we couldn't identify any other funding source that would say, hey, if you end up with an underestimate or overrun, just come back and we'll give you some more money. So I think it's already kind of built into the process. That competitive feature will do that. I do suspect one of the implementation issues along that line is going to be, I doubt any project sponsor is going to tell us in the future that the project is fully funded even though there are extra qualitative points given to projects that are fully funded.
And Chairman McKay, if I could add to that, one of the big, as Mr. Longy noted, one of the biggest issues with, and I don't want to say people purposely underestimate, but project sponsors are concerned about their congestion reduction relative to cost score because the law says we have to give priority to the projects with the greatest level of congestion reduction relative to cost. So we don't set a contingency percentage, that we leave that to the project sponsors. We're like, you have the engineers and you work with VDOT or your consultants or whomever to determine what's an appropriate contingency for your project. But what we have seen is people are cutting it close. And when we have the follow-up conversations, well, I don't want that to impact my CRRC score, even though we look at other performance measures as well. But because the law requires us to give priority to congestion reduction, some of the project costs that come in on the application does cut it close. Now, when we get to fully funded, we have had project sponsors that say if MBTA awards whatever amount I'm requesting, this will fully fund the project. Now, what I tell the project sponsors, be careful in how you word your application, because you're the one that's wording it, you submit it. We take you at your word. So if you are unsure, and we get it, inflation, prices for construction and materials and project delays, every delay is $1 plus. And that costs money. So we tell the project sponsors, please be careful in how you word your project application. We had discussed internally, well, should the authority only fund right of way, or should the authority only fund construction when project sponsors have a more complete picture? We are here to get these projects to fruition, and we don't, at least on the staff level, want to be overly restrictive, but we do need the project sponsors to do their due diligence. But to get to your point, I think when it comes to the congestion reduction relative to cost score, that's what I hear a lot when I said, well, why didn't you ask for more money? Or why didn't you were cut? Well, I thought I had another funding source, or I really don't want my congestion reduction relative to cost score to be impacted. And for us, we do total cost. It's not how much you ask the authority, it's the total cost of your project.
If I may follow up just real briefly, I appreciate that. And I completely understand the problem we're just trying to solve here. I just want to make sure we're not inadvertently creating another one. And so I guess a question, and I don't need to have the answer to this here, but Mr. Longy, you mentioned that there were a number of projects that had given funds back to the authority. I'm just curious to know a little bit more about that. Were those projects that got funding from other sources and therefore they were able to refund some of the authority money back to the authority? And I guess the follow-up question to that is, give me an idea of the frequency in terms of how many projects come in and need additional funding from NVTA that this policy would in particular potentially correct, versus how many projects are reimbursing or giving back NVTA money because either the project ended up not costing as much as the estimate, or they got funding from another pot, federal, state, some other money that allowed them to do that.
To answer your first question about the projects that are returning money, the frank answer is we really don't know. Our funds, unlike many other funding streams, do not have an expiration date on them. So what we have seen is most project sponsors will use our funds last. So that would kind of lead me to believe it was a good cost estimate. They left themselves some contingency, but I can't exclude the fact that they applied for and got another funding source. It would take a lot of work to go back and do the research on that. I will say that projects returning funds is not frequent, probably mostly because we are the last. We typically are chosen to be the last use of outside funding that a project sponsor would use. Likewise, relatively speaking, requests for additional funding that are clearly the part of an underestimate or a cost overrun have been relatively rare as well. But they have driven a lot of discussion when they have occurred. And likewise, the transfer between projects, one of the reasons for the not allowing future transfers between projects is if you have a project that is in a difficult strait, we don't want to see a project sponsor transferring money out of that project to support another project. And then it goes and upsets the whole balance on the CC congestion reduction score in the 2-year update. But it also runs the risk of us having a project that doesn't have a path forward, but the money has already been moved to other projects. When we looked at the no aspect of the policy, we felt we needed to tie up the transfer aspect as well. I hope that answers your question. I know I didn't, couldn't give you facts, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to understand order of magnitude where projects fall. And if we can't get that, that's fine, but I think it would be helpful for me at least to know how many are falling into the 2 different categories here we're talking about. Just so that I just want to have the confidence that we're putting in place a policy that fixes a significant problem that exists at MVTA today that's been identified, versus, any potential downsides or other issues that it could present. And I'm trying to balance those 2 in my mind. And so I'm having a hard time understanding the magnitude of the problem here that we're trying to fix in a quantitative way. And I think if it is as strong as you mentioned, I think, something that would help us with that would be beneficial, I would think, to the authority.
we did do an internal analysis, and I have to say it was fairly high level. But we think we are facing the potential for cost underestimates or overruns that exceeds $1 billion on projects that are already approved.
And we're definitely not getting that much money back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't actually think that, with the exception of something you mentioned before, which is it ties up, if localities are giving money back for projects and that money was tied up and couldn't be used for other things, but otherwise I can't see an issue with getting money back.
Oh, there's no issue with getting money back. I'm just understanding the congestion piece and cost piece as a major driver. I can think of some projects where you could still be very competitive in that space and easily increase the projected cost of the project to make sure you don't run into a policy 30 problem. And if a jurisdiction does that, that's a bigger piece of the pie than that is not available to other projects potentially in other jurisdictions. That is at the heart of my issue and making sure that doesn't happen, because this would be a new policy with a trigger point. And if you wanted to avoid that trigger point on the front end, you're going to try to program your project to avoid that trigger point. I don't know how much space there is on some of these projects between not disrupting your congestion relative to cost score versus increasing your projected project costs so that you don't run into a policy 30 problem.
But because our money is drawdown money, right? Because our money is drawdown versus, so you need $100,000 a locality. They're not handed $100,000. It is reimbursed as money is used, and then they draw that money down. I guess it would tie it up, but if they overestimated, it would tie it up, but I don't know. It couldn't possibly tie it up for long because it's money's being drawn down or not, right? So.
I think, Madam Chair, to your point, it gets us to, right now, we're doing out year programming. So we're working on estimates in general, what we think we will have. For the projects, and there have been a handful that didn't need all of the money you approved to complete their project. We pay on a reimbursement basis. We still have the money. I think the most difficult thing is saying, hey, we need to close it out. The project is open. We've cut the ribbon. Just close it out. Because sometimes a project sponsor may try to find other uses that, may go along with that
Like a
project.
bad issue.
Chair
Yeah, project.
Chair Randall, we can oftentimes see a positive closeout coming based on the rationale for the expenses being submitted, where we actually had to have a frank conversation with project sponsors, more than one, saying, you're just now getting to the point of being ridiculous about what you think is a project.
Just close it out.
Just close it out.
But on the flip side, what we also try to do is stagger with smart scale. Instead of being in a position where our application cycle is parallel to smart scale, we try to stagger it so that a project sponsor will know where you stand, and you'll know next week for this round of smart scale, at least with the staff recommendations, where you stand with smart scale. So then when we do our call for projects, and we will come to this board asking you to approve call for projects for this 6-year program update, when you're not competing, you can have a better opportunity of saying, well, I know where I am with smart scale, or is it the revenue sharing year or other funding sources? And that's to maximize the funding sources so that if you do have an overrun or cost estimate issue, is not the authority that you're solely looking at to try to make your project whole. And the last point I'll note to Chairman McKay's point, some projects are so large, they can increase in cost and it doesn't move the needle for congestion reduction relative to cost. We run the model because the law requires every dollar that you program with that 70% has to undergo that process. Some projects have asked for additional money and it hasn't moved the needle.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, just for the benefit of new authority members, this arose out of a circumstance last year that was really quite controversial. We decided to be the right term, merciful, if you will. But in exchange for that, we wanted a strong policy. And this policy is the result of a fair amount of debate at the last meeting. And I think in response to the legitimate concerns of Chairman McKay, the firm rule is we're not going to do it. If you really have, and the words I think are pretty well crafted, a really unique, unexpected basis, you're going to have to petition us, and you're going to have to stand in front of this group. And we like each other mostly, but to justify that. So having that, it seems to me that small ability to petition gets at, I think, the point that you're concerned with, which is, and plus the other safeguards that are built into the normal review of projects. So, I mean, from my own view, I think we struck a good balance. If we're going to do a policy, it's clear what our policy is, but we can't envision every circumstance. And so we've provided a process, and that process will be rigorous and will be difficult and will be, I think, appropriately limited to very unique circumstances. So anyway, let me ask CEO Bachman or Mike, what are you asking us to act on this tonight or at the next meeting?
Next meeting.
In February, our goal was, well, we were directed to bring you back a draft before the next 6-year program update.
Yeah, this is an information item tonight.
So it would be an action item at our next meeting.
Yes.
Is that what you're suggesting? So please, if anyone has any additional questions or concerns, because I think we'd all like to we've had a lot of debate on this, and I think we'd like to resolve it one way or the other at the next meeting. Is that available to people? Thank you.
The vice chair just nicely said we're going to go on. And I concur. Would you like to go into the finance committee reports, Mr. Long? And again, these are just information. These are information items.
Councilmember Snyder.
Thank you. I'm a poor substitute for former Mayor Rico, who did a great job chairing this committee over a number of years, but I'll try to carry on. So the Finance Committee last met on December 12th. The next meeting is scheduled for February 13. That's the same night as the authority, and normally at what, 6 o'clock or what? Yeah, normally at 6 o'clock. In the December meeting, the committee established our meeting schedule for 2025, continued work on the authority's 3 budgets through affirming prior guidance on revenue projections and funding transfers for the operating budget, how to present budget proposals for review and discussion, the timeline leading to the presentation of the proposed budgets to the authority. Specific to the December meeting, the committee reviewed and provided feedback on 2 new initiative requests. And this has budget significance, which are, number 1, an additional communications position significantly paid for by reductions in outside contractor costs through insourcing. So the call here is for the additional communications position, but it would largely be funded by doing in-house what we were asking outside contractors to do. Now, we'll still use outside contractors, but much less, as I understand it. So that's point number 1. And then the second potential position is an additional financial position related to increased reimbursement requests and the growing size of the investment portfolio. And I would just add that I think the greatest risk to this authority lies in the area of finance. And so we want to make sure, and we've had great finance work so far, but we want to make sure that we have adequate resources to make sure that we're running this organization at absolutely at the very top in terms of all the finances that we deal with. So that's the recommendation for an additional financial position. Then the committee expects to receive additional information on these 2 initiatives at our February meeting. So that's again, more information in February. Additionally, the committee received and reviewed the 3 monthly reports on the investment portfolio, operating budget, and monthly revenue. At the request of the committee, the monthly revenue report included a graph and recap of the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program, IOEP, revenue performance. These estimates are provided by VDOT's main office in Richmond. The IOEP transfer was supposed to replace approximately 20 million of the revenue diverted by the 2018 General Assembly action. But it's only met that expectation once in the last 5 fiscal years. I know, Madam Chair, you may want to make a comment about that. I know that's been a source of great interest, to say the least, right? So anyway, that's the Finance Committee recap. Does anybody have any questions about it? And Michael, you're here to provide any of the data that was summarized in the report. So
I would just say the IOEP chart is in your package, as is all of the detailed information that was presented to and reviewed with the Finance Committee.
Any questions?
And do you want to be the new financial committee chair?
No. But if drafted, I will serve.
There you go.
Oh, that's easy.
Sounds like
That's
done.
easy. So Longy, do you have any? Then when you show up, see what happens, we just show up. Mr. Longy, do you have anything else to add? Nothing on any of the finance items? No, okay, wonderful. We will move to item 18, which is the CEO report.
Madam Chair, the only thing I would note is now we're showing in the CEO report a different way of depicting the project status updates. Before we were just showing the spreadsheets, but now we're trying to be more comprehensive in how we relay that information. So we talk about, or the report speaks to how many standard project agreements we have, those that we see in the pipeline, projects that have been executed, but the funding hasn't started, just to provide a more holistic picture of where we are. I will note all of this information is in our Nova Gateway, novagateway.org, novagateway.org. Thank you. I don't want to say the wrong thing, that you can go to on our website and find this information as well, but we did want to make it more user-friendly. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Okay, for my comments, first of all, I do want to wish everyone a happy new year. Hope your holidays were fantastic, and I want to absolutely wish our General Assembly members good luck as they go into this session. I will say that especially with Senator Boysko, she does a great job contacting me and Ms. Backman during the session, and so we can talk. And, you know, I think it should be known and said that if there is a MBTA discussion, an MBTA issue, we have liaisons down at the General Assembly who sit on MBTA. So Delegate Sewell, Delegate Delaney, Senator Boysko, and that is who I trust the General Assembly will go through if it's an MBTA issue, because that you are appointed, and that is why you're there. And so I think it's going to be a interesting session. That's never good. You want to be bored. That's never good. But I do wish the three of you all the luck, and please know, and I know that Senator Boysko knows this, that you can call me anytime if it's an issue of MBTA, and we can talk. Also remember that by profession, I'm a mental health therapist. So if you need to call me, get some of that too. just give me a ring. I'll be there for that as well. I do have a couple of requests for the authority. I'm going to ask that you all identify an alternate from your jurisdictions, if you're a jurisdictional member. We've had times we needed an alternate to be at an MBTA meeting and there wasn't one identified. And it's a lot easier for you if you have an alternate identified, and then you just know who to go to. And then when you send that person, please update them on what they're coming for, the things they're going to be discussing, so they know when they walk in the door. The MBTA members are really good about making the meetings. But if for whatever reason you can't make a meeting, you're on vacation, you have something come up, having an alternate identified is really, really helpful. We ran into one time when we didn't have that, and it was less helpful. So identify an alternate and then brief them. And then it'll make your life much easier, I promise. Also, we did approve our schedule tonight, but we all know also that we have our own budget seasons that come up. And when you are in budget season, it's hard for even the alternate to come. Just let us know in advance when that's going to happen. We know that people need to be there for your budgets. And so just let us know. Thirdly, I don't think, with the exception of you, Mr. DeFerrante, I don't think there's anyone who's on MBTA and MBTC on the, is anyone on both bodies? You are on both bodies? You're on, okay, I didn't realize that. We don't have competing meetings right now, but there have been times when that has happened because a holiday failed or something like that. So MBTA and MBTC have competing meetings. MBTA is always the one you should come to first. I'll let you know. Just letting you know that, just in case you had any questions about that. We do need to. No, very good. Very good. Thought you wouldn't. Over the next week, I will be contacting all of you because we do need to fill out our subcommittees, and we have a lot of new members. And so what I will do is I'll contact you. I'll let you know what they do, and then you can let me know what you're interested in, whether it's finance, whether it's GPC, whether it's PPC. I don't want to assign people to things, and that's not what you have interest in. The finance committee is very different than the GPC committee, which is very different than the PPC committee. So I will give you a call and I will ask you what you think you want to do. We'll talk through it and things like that. It is helpful for everyone on the authority to try to sit on at least one subcommittee. Now that is, I know that the General Assembly members, that's a hard call for them just because they're not here some of the time, but for localities, that would be most helpful. So expect a phone call, and we'll just kind of walk through the committees, and then we can make some decisions. I will say today, for the GPC committee, Ms. Reed and Ms. Jefferson, if you all would like to be reappointed for the GPC, then you guys, they're 2-year appointments. So without objection, I would re-up your appointments unless you're like, God, no. Please don't. You're okay. I remember when I first called you, you were like, God, no, the finance. You're like, put me on that GPC thing. I remember that first phone call. And I was like, hi, this is Chair Randall, not finance. That's how that call went.
Let me just say the finance committee is the one where you will have the most fun and impact. So So really is between the committees. You really want to sign up. for the
Really want to
finance
sign up.
committee. Please.
No kids, I was like, yeah, hi. I want to talk about the committee assignments. And then she was like, not the finance committee. No, I'm good. I'm good. I was like, oh, okay. And then she said, let's talk about that GPC thing. So she's done that. She's done a great job. Chair Jefferson, do you have any, you want me to call you later, or do you have any, are you fine being, I can call you if you need me to. You're fine, you're good with that. Okay, sounds good. The finance committee, we now have a new chair. Finance committee, and then yay. If drafted, I will serve. And then I will make phone calls to fill out the finance committee. It really is important that we serve on these committees. It's not a huge lift, but it's really very important. And I will call you for the PPC and TAC as well. Those calls will happen, but within a week. So I won't say this week, but within a week, so I can get those names to the staff as soon as possible. For the most part, we try to have meetings on the same nights. And so we had GPC before this meeting so that you don't have to come again. And so we try to do it all at the same time. And so we will continue that practice. But I do want to know what all of our new mayors are interested in. And so I will give you a call and walk through those. I don't think that there is anything else I have. Does anyone else have any business for the good of the body? Bill, you doing okay?
Great. Yeah, thanks for caring.
I hear it's gonna snow on Friday, just if you've not heard that. It's good. And on the 20th. And on the 20th, so it is a dusting. It is a dusting, you're right. It's an inch or something, yeah. Wonderful, Bill. We thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. We are with you. Anything else? Seeing no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you.